ABC's A Million Little Things finds a group of close-knit friends trying to move on with their lives after a devastating suicide from one of their own. I'm Zach Laws of Gold Derby, and joining me now is the creator of this show, DJ Nash. And DJ, just take us back to the beginning and tell us a little bit about, where the idea for this show came from.
Well, I was working on a show. It was the worst. It was the worst gig of my career, and I don't know if you ever had gigs like that where you had to take a walk at lunch every day just to
Yes.
sort of psych yourself up. Sorry about that if you did. Yeah. So I would walk every day at lunch, just sort of trying to psych myself up. And I remember saying to my agents, like, can I just give the money back? Can I just? And they were like, no, you can't, because some of that money's ours. And I walked at lunch and I ran into a buddy of mine, and we both just lit up. It was like, hey, dude. And he was like, we should have lunch next week. And it wasn't like an LA BS thing. We both meant it. And he said, well, I'm really busy next week. How about the week after? I'm like, okay, yes, but we're doing it. And he killed himself. And I don't think that our lunch could have saved him. But I do think, pretty much every day we could have had one more lunch. And his death was this big change in my life. It made me put things in perspective. It made me realize things and look at life in a different way. So I wanted to do a show about that, about a group of friends who are all stuck in life for different reasons and in different ways. They're each not living the version of life they thought they'd be living. And this friend's death is just the wake-up call they all need to finally start living. And as I was doing that, I thought, well, maybe I can look at depression in a show. And one of the key things to unlocking for the pilot was this idea that if we have the Rome character, played by Romany Malco, if he literally has a mouthful of pills about to take his life as he gets the call that his other friend has killed himself, you see this life saved. The show is not about one friend dying. It's about 7 friends living.
Right. And I mean, I think, first of all, I'm very sorry to hear about that, of course. As somebody who's known people who've committed suicide as well, it is something that you always ask the question of why, and, was there something I could have done? Was there something any of us could have done? So certainly there's a lot of questions that survivors have, in a sense. And, the show kind of does a bit of exploring that as well, from the perspective of this group of friends.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about the way that the show does that?
For sure. Yeah. There's just definitely, it happens in cycles. Immediately there's a funeral and there's a reception and there's a group of friends who come together who are aware that other people are suffering. There's the family we're looking out for. So there's that process. But then you go on and life continues, and you have to go back into your life, and you have, the hockey game that you used to go to with him, or you have the birthday that he used to be here for. And, over the course of the first season, we're tracking what it's like in the first year of that loss, which is very immediate, very raw, wondering if maybe you were the cause, maybe you could have done something. We saw in episode 2 this beautiful scene with Chance, the Danny, who's played by Chance. He is gay, but still not out, and he wonders if maybe his dad knew, and if that's why. And we have a scene where Gary, played by James Roday, goes to the cemetery and has this chance to say goodbye to John. The one thing he never got to do was say goodbye. And we just see over the course of the season the different things that happen. Delilah, his widow, having to take off her wedding ring, to just the different mile markers that happen. And as we continue to the second season, in some ways, I was just reading a book by a survivor, and in some ways the second year is even harder, because in the first year everyone's aware, oh, that's our first Christmas, that's our first Thanksgiving, that's his first birthday. But in the second season, you don't have that safety net. Second year, rather, you don't have that safety net for people looking out for you. And I think that's what we'll examine this next season.
Was it difficult structuring a network television drama around this idea of something that is so serious and so devastating?
Well, I come from the half-hour world, so I'm a stand-up comic. I did stand-up comedy since I was 16 years old, and then when I started writing for TV, it made sense to go right into comedies, and I did that for 16 years. I did a project a year ago that was a half-hour dramedy, and I loved the script, and it was just we had so much fun making it, and it tested really well, but they didn't know how to program it because it couldn't go with another half-hour comedy that was strictly a comedy. And I said to my producing partners, to Aaron Kaplan and Dana Honor, I said, after a year of having to apologize for doing a comedy with drama, maybe I can get rewarded for doing a drama with comedy. And I have to say, right from the beginning, it has been just delightful because anytime I want to put a joke in it, we can. And anytime we want to end on drama, we can do that. In fact, with the writers, I say to them, every scene should either make us laugh or make us cry. Hopefully, it's doing both. And if it's doing neither, we should probably cut the scene. So for me, I first found comedy in my life because you needed it. And so I started telling jokes when I was a kid as a coping mechanism, and I think that's what Gary's doing. So I believe that even at a funeral, sometimes people are making jokes, and probably when they're most needed. So putting comedy and drama right up against each other, that's really what our show is all about, because that's what life is.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a certain reality comes from having comedy in drama because there's comedy in life, and also in a sense, it makes you feel as if you know the characters a little better because if you laugh with people,
Yeah,
you know them better.
it's totally right. I think, it's interesting. There's a line I put in the pilot. It was a stage direction, but it sort of summed it up, which is, you know, totally inappropriate the way only friends can be. And I think that's exactly right. That once you're close enough to someone, there is no joke that's off limits because you have a history and you have a track record. And so if I can fly a little close to the sun on this joke because I love you, I support you.
Right.
Exactly.
Let's talk a bit about this group of friends. Talk a bit about, first of all, I mean, developing the characters, but also finding the right actors because you have this large ensemble cast in the show. Can you just talk a bit about those two things?
Yeah, the two very big things. So trying to come up with the characters. Once I knew that I wanted to do a show about one friend living when another friend died, I thought, who else do I populate with this world? And so there's just certain personalities I wanted to have present. I wanted to have, I mean, Gary to me was a really key character in this show. He is basically the character, and the actor, in my mind, was the key to the show working, finding that balance between comedy and drama. Gary has to be dark and has to be negative, and I needed to find a reason for him to be negative that was authentic. And for us, the reason is, he beat cancer, but as he says in the pilot, it's not that I don't have cancer, it's that I don't have cancer to up with that way in which he could look at life with this glass half empty approach was key. I also gave him the job as an actuary. And even though in the first season there were a lot of jokes about we don't really talk about his job, I really feel like it was integral to who he is. An actuary is someone who values a person's life for an insurance company and really looks at every life and goes, well, you do this, you make this, you're this, how old, your life's worth this. And the idea that you would look at every single person and go through life deciding this is what your life is worth, and then giving him cancer and having that completely thrown upside down was really key there. I also knew that I wanted each of them to be going through their own thing. So as soon as I knew that I had Gary, I knew that I wanted to have Rome, who was dealing with his own depression. I wanted him to be different than John. I wanted it to be that their depressions were different. And I wanted for Eddie, him to be hiding a secret, because I think at the heart of this show, or the heart of the pilot, was this idea that these friends are really great friends. They've known each other for 10 years, but there's some really big things that they've never shared before. And so I wanted everyone to sort of have a secret, which we've discovered everyone's secret over the course of the first season. And then for me, I wanted the women to be stronger than the men. So I wanted to populate them with these women who were independent and strong and, the better half. So, Regina, who had lost her restaurant but was determined to have it again, I wanted to see that strength of someone who was going to define life on her terms. I also wanted that marriage between Regina and Rome to be one that we root for. To me, the idea that he had this great job, he lived in a nice place, had a really great marriage, that was the thing where you go, well, why would that guy want to kill himself? That's exactly right. The depression isn't labeled easily. It's not easily spotted. There can be people who are silently suffering. So having him have a marriage that we root for, having them just be a strong couple was key for me. For Eddie and Catherine, I wanted in the pilot. I knew that we needed to compromise Catherine a little bit in order for us to not hate Eddie and the fact that he'd had an affair. So in the pilot, she is purposely cold and distant so that we go, okay, he wanted more. He wanted more from a relationship. The fun and challenge of the season was, okay, you don't like her in the pilot, but by 17, I'm going to make you love her. And we did. We really, like, it speaks to Grace Park, and we'll talk about the casting in a second, but you just needed a character who you think someone's one way and then you flip it. I mean, our whole show, everything about our show lives in these card flips. You think that Rome's going to kill himself. No, John kills himself. You think that Eddie is having an affair with one of his guitar students' moms. No, it's Delilah. So all of that was about thinking you see the world one way and then flipping it. Finding Delilah was also key. You needed someone who was so maternal, someone who obviously loved her kids, someone who would have loved to have connected with her husband, but at some point they lost their way. And then there's John. And I think for John, I wanted somebody who was dynamic, someone who changed the chemistry of the room the moment he entered it, someone who had the business savvy to take on the world like he does in the cold open. And so that he was always the savior and he was silently hurting inside. And then as I was writing this, there was a character that was just going to be a day player, just be in one episode. I thought, wouldn't it be funny if Gary is at a breast cancer support group and he hooks up with this woman and we'll just have her there. And then as I was writing it, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if when Gary comes through the doors at the church, well, he'd have the woman there from the night before. And well, if she's there, she'll probably have to be at the reception. And then when it came time to have her say this candidate, I thought, well, let's give it to Maggie. She's the new addition to the group. And then wouldn't it be funny if Maggie is a psychologist and Gary, who had slept with her the night before, has no idea. And as soon as we got to her doing the Kennedy speech, I realized she was a series regular and probably one of the most important ones. She's just our way into the show. She's the new friend in the group the way we are. And Allison Miller plays her so beautifully. If you want me to talk about casting now,
yes.
That was a real challenge because I have known from shows I've done before and things that have worked and haven't worked that having the person who could deliver the comedy and the drama at the same time was key. So for Gary, finding James Roday was everything to me because it's not and he's just not saying something to protect someone. And so finding that right balance and finding the person who can at one moment make a joke that is the scathing comment that we're all thinking but don't say, and at the next moment supporting the friends in this huge way, filling the void that was left by John's death. I mean, the fact that he is the one who tells Delilah, and we see in this scene with the coffee cup her fall into his arms, like there's just a beautiful brother and sister relationship that's going on between the two of them. Finding Romney was easy because I wrote the part for him. He was in a pilot with me a few years ago, and I knew this guy can deliver comedy and he can deliver drama. And so as I was writing, I mean, even in the script, it said, think Romney Malco. And when I sent it to him, I was like, hey, we're having lunch tomorrow. In the script, it says, think Romney Malco. Do you want me to take that out before you read it? And I mean, he's wonderful, and it was great. Finding Gintoli, you needed someone who was just dreamy. You needed someone who could, you believe, have a secret and also felt the remorse and the turmoil of being a great dad but needing more from life. Finding Stephanie who plays Delilah, Stephanie Shostak, it was not who I originally thought of for it, but now looking back, I can't imagine anyone else playing it. The fact that she's French, the fact that she is a little different culturally sort of speaks to how all of them don't quite fit into their lives. And it's a texture to the show that I absolutely love. And Grace Park, everyone thinks I'm Gary. Maybe a part of me is, or part of me wishes I were Gary. Maybe that's what it is. I am Catherine. So those stories and I mean, some of them come directly from my life, but all of them are, I just feel such a bond with Catherine, which is a little surprising because I don't know if you know, I'm not a Korean woman, but yeah, I hide it, but that's true. But she was just amazing, and finding her was in Vancouver. How are you? It's in your backyard. And she's just been amazing. And every time we put her in an impossible situation, she just shines. She just really shines. Christina Moses, who plays Regina, she is so authentic. You know, the compliment the show gets that means the most to me is authentic. If people feel like it's real, that's so important to me, because you don't want the jokes to feel forced. You don't want these dramatic moments to feel heightened. It just has to feel like, oh, I could be any of these people, and I can't believe they're going through it, and I can't believe the strength they're showing and going through it. And Christina, like, it's almost impossible for her to say something that doesn't feel real. She's really, really good. It's really great. And the thing that's amazing about our cast is I like them all. Like, it's like the only time it's trouble is when we do group scenes, because they're laughing and I'm like, guys, we gotta go. But they really, none of that is fake, because they really do hang out with each other. They really are friends. It's pretty remarkable. And then the kids, you got to talk about those kids. I mean, the idea that I could take some of the storylines I did, like Danny coming out, and have Chance deliver it so real. And even in the pilot, he's crying in the funeral. And he said to me when we were shooting the pilot, he comes up to me and says, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" And, you know, I've only known him 2 days. Yeah, come here. What are you looking for here? I said, "What?" He said, "Scale of 1 to 10. What are you looking for here in terms of tears? What do you want? Like an 8?" So there's the idea that he could do that. And then, you know, Lizzie, probably the most famous person in our cast, because every time you go out with her, she plays Sophie. She stopped for an autograph. But just to bring both the teenage angst as well as the pain she's feeling for losing her dad, you know, that was really great. And then Mighty Theo, Tristan, you know, that he's sort of the mascot of the show. A lot of his stories come from my son and daughter's life. And just, it's been so fun to see him tell those stories. And we have an incredible guest cast too. Yeah, I just say that, like, we've pulled some favors. Constance Zimmer, Dre DeMatteo, you know, Laura Hardin. Like, we've had Gerald McCraney. I don't want to leave anybody out. I probably did, but they're just incredible. Romy Rosemont. Like, there's incredible talent that has come in, and in some ways, our main characters have shined most with this guest cast. Like Sam Pancake coming in as Catherine's assistant. That dude is hilarious.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a wonderful cast you're working with, both you know, main and recurring and guest. So.
It's really, really, I'm very fortunate. Yeah.
Well, it's a wonderful new show. Congratulations on it. And DJ, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
And thanks to all of you at home for watching. Make sure you hit the subscribe and like button below, and make sure you visit us at goldderby.com for all the latest Emmy news and to make your predictions.